Hey, welcome to Build Your A-Team podcast. Really looking forward to this conversation with Nick Ripplinger. The purpose of the podcast is to share how veteran entrepreneurs and business leaders build exceptional teams, uncovering whether success comes from intention, strategic analysis, or intuition, or just pure luck. Through these candid conversations, we'll dive into their hiring philosophies, lessons learned as they built their teams, and challenges they faced. For today's session, I'm excited to talk to Nick, the president and founder of Battle Site Technologies, a veteran-owned company based in Dayton, Ohio, and they specialize in the rapid innovation of products for the front line. Nick joined the reserves, Army Reserves, as an MP, but then within 6 months he became activated, was active duty, and then served in numerous assignments in combat zones in the Middle East and also for NATO in Europe. And from his experiences, Nick is now transforming military problems and doing R&D for practical solutions to help them and us be stronger, be excel. I want to also just point out real quick, Battle Site Technologies, man, you have 5 active products now, 30 more in the pipeline being developed and built. But you guys have been awarded the Soin Award for Innovation and the Arthur H. and Mary E. Wilson Award for Top Venture Impacting Veterans in 2019. You guys have products like CrayTac, a photoluminescent writing device, which is like a glow stick device to write with. Um, Really cool. So that in itself is very cool, and we can dive into that. But finally, I just want to mention that you are an author of Frontline Leadership: Applying Military Strategies to Everyday Business, which you published in 2015, right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Feels like a
So
lifetime ago.
right, a decade now, right? A decade. But Nick, you've done a lot. You've done a lot. You've seen a lot. You've had a a business you've built from scratch. I'm curious for the audience. Can you start with like what is do you believe your superpower, your zone of genius?
Yeah, I think what I really bring to the table at the company now is just the ability to get in the rooms with customers and build that rapport, and hear like some of their challenges that they're facing. Like you've done some amazing stuff in the military, and like kind of that alpha mindset of like we're the best and can't let the guard down. But sometimes we have to have those candid conversations about like, hey, you know what, this isn't exactly working right. And just being able to get the customers to have the trust and faith in us, like, hey, I can bring these guys problems and they're going to take them back and jam on it and try to come up with a solution. And like there's no judgment, there's not like we're going to exploit that weakness or anything like that, but really just that relationship piece with the end users.
So you just hear all the problems from customers and you go back to the drawing board to just ideate and build these solutions. Are there solutions that they recommend that you work on, or is it just something you guys come up with totally on your own?
Yeah, so we really pride ourselves on no ego here. So, right, if the men and women out in the field have a good idea, like we can come back and we can manufacture it or we can prototype it to get testing and stuff. And I honestly think some of those best ideas come from the men and women in uniform. They're hands down, the smartest, best customers I could ever ask for. And sometimes they just, hey, here's a problem. I have zero idea. Can you guys just go back and think on it? And so I think the best thing that we do here is we work hand in hand at every step of the development process with those end users to make sure we're actually solving their specific problem. And at the end of the day, the team here at Battlesite doesn't care if it's our idea, their idea. We really are just solely focused on having that impact on the mission.
Cool. So amongst the multitude of different government contracting businesses and R&D companies like yourself, what makes BattleSite special, you think?
Oh, I think there's so many different things, but I honestly think like the number one thing is the team that we have here. Like we have an unlimited vacation policy that probably is underutilized. Like everybody's always in the shop. It's super easy, working on these problem sets to show up motivated. And like even just this morning, we got a email from a customer saying, hey, we used XYZ in this scenario, and just, again, kind of back to that relationship with them. It's always ongoing. And, hearing the actual impacts, like the team was out there popping a bottle of champagne, like, hey, we did good.
Oh, that's really cool. Just that constant interface and communication with the client. Are you guys all hybrid or are you remote? How do you
Yeah.
have that?
So when we started this company, myself and one of the other co-founders had a very strong desire to build this company as a way that we could run from our iPhones. With that being said, if I'm not on the road out at a customer site, I'm in the office every day, and so is all the other employees. So we are, kind of by choice, not by design, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Here in the office.
Okay. So can you walk us through here? You served, you worked at NATO and CID, and then what prompted you to start a business, an R&D business?
Yeah, so completely dumb luck. Did not set out to start a company. It just kind of happened. So I got medically retired in 2011. Had this beautiful plan. I was going to take a year off, go back to school, figure out what I want to be when I grow up. The wife at the time, we were home for like 3 weeks, and she told me she was pregnant. I didn't know anything about kids besides they're expensive. So kind of threw that plan out the window. Took a government job here at the Air Force Base. Did not love every minute of that. So that lasted about a year. Then I went out to industry at a defense contractor company. That company sold to private equity. I went to a large, like massive publicly traded defense contracting company. That's really where I fell in love with manufacturing and building. That company went through a big public merger, and I got recruited to the last firm I was at to kind of help, facilitate the sale to private equity. And we were, popping champagne bottles. The deal finally closed. And I was like, man, I'm just burnt out. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I'm not going to another defense contracting company just to, sell it to private equity.
Right.
So I took a couple months off, and, super fortunate to be in that position to be able to afford that. And actually, I was talking with like one of my mentors. He's like, dude, you've done this for, 7, 8 years at this time. You've had success. Like, why don't you just go out on your own? And so really kind of sat back and like thought of, some of the problems I faced in Iraq and the Middle East and everywhere else. And we kind of came up with the idea of like, how cool would it be if you had an IR chem light you could write with instead of just throwing static 6-inch pieces of plastic. And, built the first one in my kitchen. So it's like very garage style setup. And it's just kind of grown a little out of control from there.
You kind of glance, you just kind of, just roll right over that, saying you built a solution to that problem, right, in your garage. You must have been technically sound to even do something like that.
Dude,
Where
I'm
did
like
you
the
get that
worst
from?
engineer. Like, we
Yeah.
have such a
Well,
great team. I
was
think
it
it's
your
just
partner then, your co-founder that did that?
no, he's an accounting guy. So don't get me wrong, we built a lot of these together, and I think we were like really good problem solvers. But it was really just kind of like that never quit mindset of like, hey, I have this idea, let's go find a way. And we always make the joke. I think it was like Edison. He said, like he found like 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have a million ways not to make one of these things work. And luckily we were fortunate enough to kind of stumble across that magic formula that does work.
So trial and error, it looks like.
Oh yeah,
Lots of error.
that's something we talk about and preach here at Battleside is like get to fail fast. Like I don't want you to go spend like 2 weeks doing research and doing, a paper study. Like go out in the lab and build it. It's either going to work or it's not. If it doesn't work, we're going to learn a bunch of ways as to why it doesn't work. We can go back to the drawing board and go build again.
And potentially discover new use cases for what you've already built in the process, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every day it's, innovation, whether it's on the production line or whether it's with the customers or whether it's, behind the scenes. I think if you're not failing, you're not really learning.
Fair. So you have a product, you and your co-founder, you've developed, hey, maybe this could be something that we sell and help our military men and women. Can you walk us through how you thought about hiring at that point? Who did you hire first? Why? And how did you intentionally build your team?
Yeah, so our first hire, um, outside of the co-founders, we hired an army mechanic. Young kid, did his 4 years, punched out, and really that first hire was for the skill set. Right, we needed somebody who knew how to turn a wrench, how to build something, so we could kind of take that off of our plates. Um, and like looking back on it now, it's like super easy to triage the past. But I think with that first hire, we did something very unintentional that has laid the foundation for our future hiring. Is that young kid, his name was Sal. Absolutely love this kid. Stay in contact with him to this day. Um, he brought that same kind of mission mindset coming right out of the military.
Mhm.
So, right, my transition was terrible. I didn't really plan for it. So, like, we do have a huge passion for helping transitioning vets here, but also it's just good business for us because they understand the mission. Even though he wasn't, kicking in doors and, you know, throwing chem lights everywhere, all that training, all that like esprit de corps stuff was there with him. Yeah, so I think like that's definitely part of our hiring criteria now is
Yeah.
always look for the veterans first. But that first hire, it wasn't part of the plan. It just happened to like work out, and again, we learned from it, and it's like, hey, this actually really helps the
Yeah,
business.
so we talked to a lot of founders and CEOs and entrepreneurs here, and there's been a lot of stories of that first hire where it's, hey, we have a partner, co-partner, co-founders, partners, etc., and we've just coincidentally met Sal or whomever, right? Coincidentally met them, and they're like, hey, you can help us. Was it that kind almost accidental and luck, or did you say, you know what, we need a guy who can build this first? And did you guys do hiring boards and interview multiple candidates to really get that?
No, we didn't do any of that like we do now, but like it was like the Wild West. His dad actually reached out to me and was like, "Hey, can you talk to my son, transitioning vet?" And I was like, "Yeah, dude, absolutely." Like, huge passion for that. And literally, like, he came to the shop. We were like working out of a broom closet at this time, uh, and it just things clicked and like made him an offer on the spot. Had no clue how we were going to pay for him at that time,
Yeah.
but I was like, "You're young, like you're resilient. You'll figure it out." But I think kind of like along that thought process, our second hire was really the one out of the blue. And she's still with us today. Just celebrated, I want to say like 6 years with the team. And we were able to acquire her from the government side. This is kind of the beginning, or like kind of the beginning of growth, and like contracts were coming in, and we didn't exactly know what all we were signing up for FAR clause wise, and what like the programmatic side of the customer needed, keep
Mm.
these contracts compliant and stuff. And she's grown into our director of programs, and not military, but came from the government world and understood the what they wanted and what we were trying to do. And
How to do business
it
with the government, right?
yeah, and that's like it's not always rational how the government does business. So you really need that. For us, we really needed that inside knowledge of,
Hmm.
right, we're keeping the Joes happy by giving them this product and everything, but how do we keep the compliance stuff and not get sideways? And so I respectfully call her our guardrails here on these
Yeah.
contracts. And
So you were
like,
intentional about her uh,
yeah,
needing that capacity within the organization, and you found her.
yeah, and we interviewed several people for that job, and I was just wasn't super happy with the candidates. Like, yeah, like I think you're more than capable to do the job, but you know, can we work hand in hand? Are we going to have that type of relationship when one of us has an idea at 8 p.m. and just fire off a text and say, hey, we'll talk about this tomorrow, and like really have that kind of full team commitment?
Yeah,
And
somebody who, in the EOS terms, GWC gets it, wants it, and the capacity can do it is kind of it's something that can be learned, that third part, but it's
yeah,
at least someone who gets it, what the mission is, and who wants to be helpful and be of value to the environment, to your team.
yeah. And on the flip side, like we've done this completely wrong a few times too here at Battle Site, where that last piece of can do it. Like, yeah, hands down, these guys are wicked smart, have the ability to do it, but they don't. If they're not bought into the mission or bought into the team, it's like, what are you doing here? So we've had to make some changes on that front over the years, but
So,
and now
so
okay.
yeah, so sorry to interrupt you, but just the mission. I want to kind of peek under the hood about the mission. For some businesses, it's hard to be mission focused, right? You have an application and for the military, directly for the front line. So it's more, I would say it's easier to hire veterans to align with a mission. Do you feel like your mission for Battle Site has evolved over the years, or has it been the same from the beginning?
I think the mission has always been the same, right? I think the way we word it and phrase it has evolved over time. We used to say technology for the front line, and like that wasn't very specific. Then we started talking, multispectral signaling and communication, which is truly like the core of what we do, but nobody really understands what the hell that means.
Yeah.
And now it's, we make products that make the warfighter's mission safer, simpler, and more lethal. And that's, kind of been the line we've been using for the last 3 or 4 years. And it seems like it resonates with people. Not a ton of room for interpretation there.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. It's
And
really
it,
clean.
and it really helps us like when we're making a decision on whether we're going to go after something or not. Just because we can go after something doesn't mean we should go after something.
Fair.
So if it doesn't check that box of safer, simpler, and more lethal, it's not for us. And I think we've done a really good job staying disciplined and staying in our lane.
So, how big is your team now, Nick?
So we're still super small. We are only about 8 employees right now. Kind of our whole model is design, develop, prototype, test,
Hmm.
finalize here in the shop, and then outsource the manufacturing.
Yeah, so you don't need to be big for that.
No, my ADHD is like way too bad for like being,
So,
managing ISO production lines.
oh man, yeah, and you have to probably be ISO 9001 for manufacturing for the government and all of that. So, when you look back at your journey and you think about your best hires, what do you think? Was it skill, mindset, or something else that made them successful?
Honestly, I think it all comes down to mindset, right? At the end of the day, like all the tasks here can be taught and trained. Um, but you can't train somebody's mindset. You can't train somebody's level of professionalism. You can't train somebody's level of dedication. Like all those intangibles are way more important to me, like now, than the skills. And like I said, we got super lucky the first time we went after skills and just happened to have the right culture fit. Um, we've also made that mistake hiring for the right skills with the wrong culture fit, and just the amount of time, money, energy wasted is astronomical on that front.
I would say, yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's a specific stat I'm gonna have to look up here for this, but I think 90%, that number more or less about 90%, an overwhelming majority of employees that leave or are terminated or just, you part ways is because of the intangibles, right? This culture fit. It's because that they may be super experienced and very skilled at their tasks, but the culture isn't there. How do you so can you please like walk us through what is your culture? What are the values? How did you come up with them? And then how do you screen for that?
Yeah. So our core values are out on the like we have a bunch of TVs around here for like production and collaboration stuff, and when we're not using them for that, they have the core values on it. So I think as soon as you walk into the shop, you're kind of hit in the face with it, and uh, it's so important that we kind of reiterate that in every meeting and, every decision. But, our customers always come first. The simplest product to solve the simplest, sorry, I just screwed that up. But the simplest solution to the hardest problems,
Yeah.
right? My number one question whenever we're having like an engineering meeting or something is, how do we make this simpler? Whether it's on manufacturing side or use cases, we started off building crayons. Like, let's not get too far away from making stuff that's not as easy to use as a crayon. And then as for screening, we kind of do a 2-stage interview process here. They meet with the technical guys, and that's to kind of make sure that the skill sets and everything are made. And they come in and meet with myself and the COO, and that's like, I don't ask anything technical. Like, I assume if you made it to my door, like the technical guys have signed off, like you can do the job. And like I say this jokingly because I'm sure it's like probably against some HR rules. Like, I just really want to make sure I can work with this person and not want to punch him in the face every day.
Of course, definitely. Just you're able to get along, right?
Yeah. And so like all my questions are like, or like to, whether it's a woman or a man, I don't want to sound sexist here, is like, what do you like to do like on your off time? Like, what's important to you as a person? Like, what do you do for hobbies? What do you do for fun? Who are the people in your life that you lean on and all of that? Because like, let's face it, dude, none of us have built any of this stuff on our own. We've always had people, whether in the business or outside of the business, that we've leaned on and needed that support system. And I feel like that kind of tells you a lot about, a person's character, how they answer that.
So obviously screening, and then you do a in-depth kind of understanding of technically, can this person do the job? Can this you or your teammate, can this has this person shown the past performance of success? That kind of technical competency, and then the intangibles, the culture fit. Whether that person's a good person, right? Good dude, if you will. Yes. But looking at understanding you guys believe in simplicity, as you mentioned, reliability, and genuine utility, right? So
Yeah.
how do you assess whether your candidates, whether they are really great people and friendly and may have character, but how do you understand whether they kind of live those values of simplicity, reliability,
Yeah.
genuine
And
utility?
I think when you're interviewing engineers is like the hardest thing in the world to do, at least for me. Like engineers are wicked smart and brilliant and can come, solve problems that you didn't even know that you had,
Mm.
which is not really in line with, us, right? We want to identify the problem and come up with a very narrow scope that's going to solve that. And I think we get a lot of that out of like hobbies. Like, we hired this one like super junior, fresh out of school engineer, which was not really like was not what we were setting out to do.
Mm.
We were looking kind of for that mid-level guy, but he applied and his resume looked good. And like he talked about being, growing up on a farm and how stuff breaks all the time and how you just got to be able to fix it in the field with like what you have.
Mm.
I was like, that mindset like is perfect for here. I think it's like I wish there's like I ask these 5 questions and I get these 5 answers, and
No,
if
of
it's
course not.
this, and but I think it's just, how do you build that relationship with, a dude who's probably a little nervous on an interview to begin with, and extract kind of those, big picture kind of flaw. Like, how do you actually think about this when a combine breaks and you're 2 miles from the barn and you have a socket wrench and some duct tape?
It
Like,
reminds me of actually, that's interesting because it reminds me of team week and selection. You go through selection, and within that, there's multiple different types of like log PT and the trek and all of that. But there's a portion team week, and essentially, are you familiar with this, Nick?
yeah,
Yeah, and it's there's items that need to go from here to there, make it happen, or this problem set that needs to have this end state, make it happen. And that's where ingenuity, that's where teamwork, that's where communication, that's all important. All of that stuff flares out, and see how this person functions, and how does this person work with others? Does he play well with others? Do they try, are they iterative? Are they whatever, right? Those kinds of abilities. So that's similar to from what I'm hearing from you say.
Yeah, and I think one of the other great questions we ask is like, hey, tell me about a time you failed. Like personal, professional, doesn't really matter. And just hearing them like talk through that, and like they'll just naturally kind of expand if they actually learn something about it. It's like,
Mhm.
hey, this failed, it didn't work, so I went back to the drawing board, and this is like that's the type of like mindset and attitude we're looking for. And like
Fail
I've had
fast.
a lot of buddies that gone through selection, and it's truly like, here's a wheel and a couple rods, and you can't make a full cart out of it, but how can you piecemeal something together to move, that extreme weight from A to B?
Right.
And not
And
trying to compare us to you guys by any means, but it's kind of the same mindset here of like, you got 75% of the information, go out and do and try to come up with a 100% solution.
yeah, agreed. Yeah, and I just remember just having to haul these really heavy shit, heavy, heavy beans and poles and these sandbags and all this stuff, and everyone's tired. Obviously, everyone knows they're being watched and assessed, and it's just fatigue and lack of food, lack of energy, and you just have to get it done. And it was very interesting to see the outcome, of some of those people that can actually thrive still in that chaos and whatnot. So, um, okay, well, we talked about failures, we talked about failing fast, we talked about kind of what you assess in candidates culturally to fit. Tell us some of these lessons learned that you've screwed up on in the past to help you develop where you are now.
Yeah, so I think the biggest lesson learned is, say if I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room. And I think, always analyzing kind of who you have around you. And then like also, dropping the ego and not being afraid to admit like I called you a couple weeks ago. I was like, bro, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like I might need some help on this. Um, and I think, we're a team here internally, but we also have an external team as well that we can lean on. And, I think we all want to see each other succeed. And
Mm-hmm.
if you drop the ego, it's like, boom, I'm an open book. I'll tell you anything and everything that I know besides like how to make an infrared crown, because that's, somewhat proprietary, but everything else is like, so I think like, sorry, I'm not even sure if I'm answering the question at this point, but
It's okay. I do want to I'm going to ask that question I asked real quick, but I do want to kind of get back to what you're saying. It's critical, absolutely critical for that interview with you and the senior leaders of a team to try to create an environment where people are vulnerable. You're obviously very vulnerable. It's evident in how you talk and how you present yourself. You're very open. You have a humble mindset. And but vulnerability is something you're very open with. Like I can't do it. I can't do it myself. Let's figure this out or help me. Right? How do you think about that in creating those types of environments during the interview so you can understand how truly this person thinks and functions?
yeah. So, what I like to do is like, you can't really see it, but my whole other wall is just nothing but glass. It overlooks out to the shop and everything. And so like when they start coming in here, like I'll just tell a funny story from the past to like my COO we sit at a big conference table right across from each other. I'll just tell a story about like some wild thing that we just drastically screwed up. So when they're walking in, they already hear, some of our failures. I feel
Hmm.
like it makes us a little more relatable. It's like, all right, this is a safe place. I can, like, they're going to get that question, like, tell me about a time you failed. Well, you've already
Hmm.
heard one of our failures. It's just, how can we break down walls as quickly as possible
Mm.
and, get you comfortable, get us comfortable, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, yeah. So you lead with vulnerability first, and then they hopefully follow suit. But if they don't, you're looking for those types of people that
Yeah.
can.
And if they don't, like I'm sure you're a great engineer or a great, whatever position we're hiring for, you're just probably not a great fit for us. And
Yeah.
I feel like, you know, I know you were an officer and I was not, but the great leaders that I was under, like, never asked us to do anything that like they wouldn't do. And so I think, I have to be the most vulnerable person here at the shop if I expect other people to be, open and honest and candid and vulnerable about, what's going right and what's going wrong.
Fair. So going back to that initial question that I tripped you up on, if you think about a mishire you've had, some
Yeah.
not so great experiences and lessons learned from those experiences, can you share some of them that really impacted you today?
Yeah. So we hired arguably like probably one of the smartest guys I've ever talked to in my life.
Mm,
He's a PhD, just wicked smart guy. And for whatever reason, just personalities didn't match. Um, So he was with us for about a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. Decided to move on his own, which is super fortunate for us because if not, our hands were kind of tied. We're gonna have to make a decision.
mm,
And like in that moment, so we shut down for 2 weeks over Christmas and New Year's for maintenance and all that. So during that time, myself and the COO were so he resigned right before that. We're like, hey, like you don't have to work it out. Like when we shut down, we'll go our separate ways. Wish you nothing but the best. But during those like 2 weeks, we kind of, did some internal reflecting as to like, how do we get this so wrong, right? This guy, hands down, one of the smartest guys I've ever met, wasn't a great fit here. And so that next year we rolled out EOS, and that's really kind of where we like dove into like right people, right seats. And
EOS, Entrepreneur
EOS, yeah.
Operating System. Okay.
Um, so that really helped like guide the kind of corrective course. And it's like, we don't really need the smartest person in one specific area, right? We need good people. And that's really kind of where we reshifted all of our hiring and interviewing kind of mindset. And, there's a couple, stumbles along the way. I feel like that's going to be with any business or team. But, I feel like for the first time in 8, 9 years, however long we've been at it now, we have the very best team for us. I'm sure, there's smarter people or, more skilled people in certain areas, but we have the most well-rounded team that's just firing on all cylinders right now.
That's really good to hear. So in EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System, for people who don't know, it it's there is a component about people, how to analyze people, how to, the get it, want it, capacity to do it type, alignment with values that Gino Wickman, the author and founder of it, talks about. Um, so with your focus initially on just technical capacity and capability, this one person really helped you understand that it's less about smarts, it's less about IQ, but it's more about the people, right?
Yeah,
It's more about like the
absolutely.
fit.
Like if you
When
come in a mood every day like that, like especially on a small team of,
Yeah,
8 people, it just ripple effects and just kills the whole vibe for the shop. And it's not fair to the other people who are here and super
fair,
motivated for the mission.
exactly. So let's go back to just on that specific case. Like, why did you not get any indication when you were interviewing for this role that this person may have an amber flag? Or how did you, and if you did, how did you still rationalize to go forward with the hire?
Excuse me. Yeah, no, I mean, he interviewed incredibly well. I think the issue was with that hire is not so much on the candidate or the employee. It was we didn't really have defined like we had our defined culture and we had what we built, but we never like put it down on paper and we never like prioritized it as something like, hey, every Monday when I get in, I flip through a couple slides, and just kind of level set and remind me of what we're actually, doing here and what's the most important things. Like it's so easy to get like caught up in the detail of, a failed experiment or a contract we lost or something like that. But big picture wise, like every Monday I sit there and flip through those slides and like it's all about culture and like life's way too short to be unhappy at work. Like we have to create this fun, meaningful, fulfilling roles for everybody or they're not going to be happy. And then that's when all those things happen. So like looking back, I think it was a failure on us as the founders who made that hire because that wasn't in our forethought. Like,
And so At what point of your history, your company's history, was this? Was it like year 2, year 4, year
Like year 3,
year 3? How about halfway
like
through it?
yeah, I think we got really lucky, to be honest with you. Like we hired for some skills and they just happened to be the right people.
Yeah.
So like we never had to put an intention on it until we had that kind of conflict or whatever you want to call it. And when that happened is really like, all right, let's go back, let's document every single thing, let's talk about it, let's analyze it as to what made BattleSite the team mentality that we had before him, and how do we get back to that. And now it's kind of our guiding principles on hiring.
How how do you um what when you tell this story and you recount the lessons learned of this, how what would you recommend folks who are listening potentially that don't have a North Star yet? They haven't defined it. They may not even have, you know, concrete values to gauge their team. Like, what would you advise them to try to reduce that 3 years that you figured it out
Yeah,
into like one?
it's funny. It's like I'm mentoring a brand new entrepreneur right now, and she's done like way better than I did, founding a company. But that was like the one thing that was like, hey, like here's everything I screwed up and things I wish I would have got right sooner. And it's definitely like defining the core values, right? Like when we do evaluations on our employees and stuff here, it has nothing to do with how many parts they made or how many ideas they came up with. It is truly like we're only evaluating them to our core values.
Mm,
And our core values are what they are, and they're not going to change. And personalities change and people grow, and certain things become more important than others. And like, are those, like, as your personal growth, are they still in line with our business growth? So I think just defining those and documenting them, and then not being afraid to talk about them. Like I hold a one weekly meeting. In the first 5 minutes, I just pick a core value. I'm like, hey, I think we've really executed on this one core value last week, or hey, I feel like this is a little slipping. Like let's put some more attention on it. And just every time I get a chance to talk to people, it's always tying it back to those core values and who we are and what we're actually here for.
beautiful. And that's definitely, once you have them, right? It's easy
Yeah.
to not easy, but there's more of a clear roadmap on how to hold people accountable for it. How have you defined your core values in the beginning? So let me just paint this for context. There's a ton of core values out there. And everyone, probably every good thing is something what a business owner or an entrepreneur wants to adopt. Integrity, courage, communicating well, teamwork, uh, being account what is it, attention to detail, all of these things. How there's so many great things. How do you come up with it first, like the initial and or what it is today? But like, how do you do that to say this is what BattleSite represents?
Yeah, I love that setup too, right? There's so many core values that are important. So what I did an offsite one day with the co-founder, COO. I was like, dude, we're gonna take the next however long it takes. You've got a legal pad, I have a legal pad. Let's write down every value that we think is important to BattleSite. And we both came up with like 3 or 4 pages of notes. And so what we did then is this was like a whole day exercise, and probably shouldn't have been, but it was. So we started comparing, and like almost word for word, a lot of the same things happened. So what we did, we have 5 core values, and what we tried to do was which ones can we combine to expand into like a sentence versus like one word,
Mm,
and actually put some like context around it and tie the top you know however many we got in there together into a way that's easily digestible, that leaves no room for questions. And it was arguably like one of my favorite days at BattleSite. It's like, definitely waited too long, but we finally now have on a sheet of paper everything that makes us who we are.
yeah. Gino Wickman talks about how he recommends creating it. That's what you've done and walked away with is also awesome. I mean, you say that one day was too short or too long. I mean, I don't think so. I think once it becomes a problem and you really want to get it right, really just nitpicking over these words and what's important to the company, and the team, it just takes time. It takes
Yeah.
time, really.
And it was so amazing though, right? So I said we did that offsite, just myself and the COO, and we rolled it out to the employees like the next week, and like just putting that on paper and like presenting it to them, like nobody disagreed with anything that was on the paper, and it like a weird kind of like motivation shift too is like, all right, like these guys are finally getting it. Like everything that we built here, these guys finally are like recognizing and understanding like why it is working. So I think, that communication key was huge and definitely had, a powerful momentum push in the right direction.
Yeah, I like that. I also like what you said before, where instead of just commonplace words like values, like integrity, right? Instead of just
Yeah.
something so
Obviously nobody wants to work with a liar. Like,
right. But you guys really took the time to create it into a sentence and say, what about integrity? What about loyalty? What about duty? Respect, whatever they are. Like, you took time to say, what about that do we care about and do we hold people accountable to? Um, what other lesson learned, as far as just even that same incident you mentioned, from that person? When building a team, you fail fast, and that also means dealing with the consequences of mishires, right? Failing
yeah,
fast there. How do you now see yourself in building your team and assessing whether this person was a mishire or a great hire, and then the steps to offload, right? To the plan to get rid of them if it's not. How do you think about that now?
yeah. So it's definitely changed over the years. I know like everybody's heard the phrase, take time to hire and be fast to fire or something like that.
Slow
And
to
like,
hire, fast to fire, right?
yeah, something I did not do well in the early days, full disclosure. So we had kind of a very similar situation. Another wicked smart person on the team, wasn't a great culture fit, um, and we had to let him go. And like in both of those scenarios, like my only regret and the thing that I could have done better was to make that termination decision faster,
Hmm.
because it does have like just such a ripple effect that like when other people on the team who are high performers are working with non-high performers, like something's got to change or we're going to lose, this great employee. So like that termination decision I made at an airport based off like one email I got, but it honestly, like hindsight is like, it's probably 90 days too late.
Hmm.
And so, how do you go back to your team and say, hey, obviously this wasn't working. We made this decision. And like when you see like the like sigh of relief and like people saying thank you in that meeting,
Hmm.
to like, oh shit, like, so we did like a whole triage on that, and like all the key people that are still on the team is like, when did you guys know? And like I'm on the road a lot, I'm out in the field with customers a lot. Like unfortunately, like I don't see everything here like I wish I could. But also like, how do I build that rapport with the other team members? Like, hey, bring these problems to me sooner. Like, because if I'm at my breaking point with that employee, it probably means they were at their breaking point, months beforehand. And
Right.
I think, kind of we have, kind of a couple senior leaders here now, and leaning on them to really, share their experiences. And like my favorite question. So I do a beer wash on Friday, kind of like a hot wash at the end of a mission or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
But we have a nice bar here, so we call it a beer wash. And like my favorite question to ask them is like, where am I fucking up? Like, where can I do better to serve you guys so we can continue to serve the customers? And like the first time I asked that question, people are like, oh no, like you're doing everything great. I was like, no, like I'm not. Like I'm trying to, but like realistically, like I'm not doing everything great. It's like, how can I be better for you guys? And honestly, I just ask the same question to my kids nowadays. Like, I
Awesome.
want to be the best parent I can be. Like, what do you guys need from me? What am I not giving you? Or like, I'm not talking like toys or whatever, widgets,
Yeah.
but in like my kids are, teenagers now, and it's amazing like how those conversations have transformed over the last year. And
Yeah, I want to. Well, that's great that you're open and you're asking for feedback, and not many people do. So that's another kind of lesson learned, right? Beer wash, you need to ask for that feedback and say, what am I screwing up? I love that. I'm gonna just change slightly and go towards your book that you wrote
yeah,
a decade ago. Frontline leadership, applying military strategies to everyday business. In it, one of the lessons learned, or one of the points there, takeaway there, is avoid leading by fear, right? Avoid leading by just your rank, as people may have done, authority. Can you talk us through some of the other points that you really want to highlight in that book, and then the follow up would be like, how has that changed in the decade that you wrote it? But yeah, I'll turn it over to you.
yeah. So I definitely like, if you just rule with an iron fist and say, "Hey, I'm in charge, do this," like if you have to tell people you're in charge, you're probably not actually in charge. Such a firm believer in that one. I think like the overall theme of the book though is just it all kind of boils down to communication.
Hmm.
And whether it's employees that you have to talk to differently, like my kids, even like two wildly different personalities. Like I yell at one to get their attention and then they listen to me. I yell at the other one who's going to cry and like shut down. So it's really like taking that time to understand, how do I effectively communicate with this employee, this customer, this supplier, this vendor,
Mhm.
this prime, whatever the situation might be. I think that's the number one thing. I don't think that's changed much in the last decade. I think it's probably, after COVID and,
Sure than
digital
ever.
communications,
Mhm.
like probably very strong. But I think the biggest thing for me since writing that book is, so I wrote that book when I was a very disgruntled corporate employee, kind of as like an FU to some management. It made me feel good for like 10 minutes and like they didn't care. So like all the motivation for writing it probably, out the window. But I feel like all those, like I try to tell like really funny like military stories and how it applies to business for like transitioning vets. Like, hey, you do have all these skills. Like your DD-214 doesn't transfer to a resume, but you have all these experiences that are applicable to the real world. Um, but it'd be interesting if like I sat down today to rewrite that book.
Mm.
What would be different from like the entrepreneur standpoint compared to like middle management at a large company.
Which
So
implies that there are things that you think differently now, from being in corporate and starting your own business, that may take a slightly different approach.
yeah, I think honestly, like the big theme of like the future book, if I was to rewrite that, would be, the relationships and just how valuable those are. Been super fortunate to spend a lot of time with you in, very large rooms with, just some of the most amazing people in the world. And it's all relationship driven.
Isn't it?
And,
Hmm.
and I think if you're, doing the right thing and you're doing it with the right people and you're, having the impact that you set out to have, like everything else will kind of fall in place.
Oh man, we can have another conversation just on like what driven, what that means, right? What, because you can break that down and really assess and analyze that, just like what does that mean? But for you, what do you take away? Just if everything's relationship driven, what does that do to you and your actions and beliefs?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm pretty sure you had Dr. Jude on your podcast. And like I was doing something kind of along those lines, and I didn't really kind of connect the dots until she pointed it out. But like something I'm like really pride myself on is, being accessible.
Mm.
Like call me, text me, email me. Like you have to show up, and you have to be there if you're going to say your relationships are important to you.
Mm. Yes, cool. I do want to ask one more thing that you touched upon before we kind of conclude, but you mentioned about mentors, right?
Yep.
Is there a difference to you kind of having a mentor in service versus now outside in corporate America?
Honestly, I don't think so, right? I think Mentors, right? They're there to help guide you wherever you are in
Mm-hmm.
your journey and help you get to that, next stage. And, sometimes you outgrow mentors and sometimes, mentors outgrow you.
Mm.
So I think like the mentors I had in the military, I'm super thankful for them, like chasing schools and chasing rank and, trying to be the best NCO I could, always hanging out with those guys that, 2, 3 steps ahead of you.
Mm.
And I try to do the same thing in business. Like, I think, at CEO Circle or any other event like that, right? I want to hang out with my peers and I want to go, learn from the people that are 2 or 3 steps ahead of me. And I think kind of that veteran entrepreneur world, a lot of those barriers are, broken down.
Mm.
No,
Yeah.
I think they're very different, but also very similar, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, in the military, it's more. I mean, you nailed it. Where in the military, you think about a mentor, it's somebody who is more, higher ranking than you, more experienced than you, always just like, the more senior folks, right? Who are obviously performing well. But in corporate, it's not always that. It could, like you said, peer mentors. There's
Yeah.
peer mentorship, right? And it's stuff that people are doing well, um, and they can share and they can really just create value. And so, do you no longer I mean, even that guy you were talking about who kind of prompted you to start your business and just do it on your own? Do you still have that relationship? How do you think about that?
Yeah. So that relationship has definitely gotten stronger over the years. It's also changed a little bit. Now it's like, he's just a really good dude.
Mm,
um, so like, I probably lean on him more on like the personal side now than the business side. But I think like the peer stuff that we were just talking about is so important, right? You and I could be in the same exact place in business, and you get hit with this legal situation that maybe I have some experience on, or I get hit with this vendor problem that you might have experience on.
mm,
So I think it's like a lot more fluid on the business side than like the military side, because there is no hierarchy, right? We can put balance sheets up against one another, but
mm.
no, like who does that? It's not like you walk in with like counting somebody's stripes on their chest to know what you have to do in the military.
Hmm.
Like, so I think, peers is, very, I mean, you could have a company 10 times my size and we could still be peers or
Hmm.
vice versa.
Yeah. At what
Uh,
point do you feel for a business where it's all an internal recruiter doing the hiring and building teams? Or do you think it's sustainable?
no, it's not sustainable at all,
Mm,
in my opinion. We're probably at that point now.
mm,
I think like building the team is always going to be internal, but you know, my kind of Rolodex of engineers and, back end business people and accountants and stuff, is wearing a little thin kind of as we continue to grow.
mm.
It's not like I'm going to go out and by name try to target and recruit somebody right now. I really think like that partnership with a recruiting firm is, super important kind of for our next iteration of growth is, I think recruiters can, understand kind of the culture a little bit and what we're looking for, and definitely like hit it out of the park way better on skills than we can here internally.
Mm.
So I do see it kind of, us moving forward is, the partnership with the recruiter, like give us some people, let us continue to run our internal processes, but also free up that bandwidth and really kind of hone in on the skill side of things, and while also knowing what we're looking for.
You know, I know a great recruiting firm, a veteran recruiting firm here. But jokes aside, MilSpec talent, we recruit veteran 2.0 leaders. And you mentioned that recruiting firms, you feel like they can get the skills right better than you can. I don't think that's it. What we can get is a large, like, top of the funnel, so that you can have multiple people, kind of the ideal type of candidate, ideal type of prior experience. And what we take pride in doing is really understanding, assessing your values and the way what you guys hold dear in the team. And that's only through relationship and long-term kind of partnership. so that we can be better. But we will vet through that as well. So the people shouldn't be just brainiac PhDs or just extremely just bright, skilled, skilled folks. It's also the, Nick, how he leads, his mindset, and how the other leaders of your team lead. Like it matches, right? So that's we really do that for a lot of our clients and our other companies.
And I think I love you to death, bro. And I think like the pre-call that we had for this and like a lot of our other conversations, like the thing I love about recruiters, like you guys don't turn that off. Like you're always going and asking that one more question, and the continuous digging that I feel like you actually know me and know the company is honestly, I think why you guys are having the success that you guys are having.
I appreciate
Can't pat you guys on the back enough for that.
Thank you. That means a lot, and that's exactly our kind of thesis, right, for recruiting. And no, and we're still screwing this up, but we do not treat anyone, even candidates, as the commodities or just a means to an end. It's not. Even candidates, of course, candidates, but as we just call and we just garner initial interest in opportunities, it's a really important touch point, and it's not. And many times from other firms, it can be felt as if you're just a commodity, and we need to continue to improve upon that. But you're right, and I appreciate those kind words, and yeah, look forward to supporting anyone listening as well. Just how do you build better teams like Nick? The one thing also that you mentioned, I'm kind of rambling now, but one thing you also mentioned was a right employee. Like, what's a right employee? It's a right person in the right seat. Doesn't mean that individual employee was a rock star and notable recognitions and all of this, just a player, but an A player for you, it's somebody in the right seat that does your task in your environment well, right? So it's not necessarily the smartest guy, not necessarily the most charismatic, not necessarily the most X. It's just the click, the match.
Yeah, it's the whole person kind of mindset.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Lastly, your just advice to other veteran entrepreneurs, who are at this point of how do I build the team, or do I build a team? Do I invest in money to build teams, or how do I go about evaluating candidates for the team? What would your thoughts be?
I think there's two big takeaways. One, I think is like just document everything and like be super intentional about how you go about documenting it. And it's so easy just to like when you get in a bind, pull out that sheet of paper and go down those 4 or 5 things. It kind of clears the fog a lot. And the other thing is like reach out. I think there's no better community than the veteran entrepreneur community, and like lean on the people who have been there and done that. And I feel like everybody kind of in our circles that we run with, Freddie, is like will tell you what they did right and they'll tell you what they did wrong and like what to watch out for. And I think I'd much rather learn from somebody else's mistake than make the mistake myself. And as a way to pay that forward, I feel like I have to be open and honest with everybody else in our community about the mistakes I've made and hope they don't make the same mistakes I do.
Yeah, we have this that just relationship, that transparency amongst vets, and we'll just share, and that's what I really love about this community as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's no better community in my mind.
Awesome, Nick. Thanks so much for spending the time with us. Really appreciate it and learned from this conversation. For the rest of the listeners, now you go build your A team. Thanks.